Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I'm back again today doing another video. The subject of today's video is going to be me going through all my award picks for the end of the year for the 2018 to 19 NBA season. So I'll be going over individual awards and then team, um, like first team, second team, third team for all NBA, and then the same thing for the all defensive teams and all rookie teams. So sit back, relax, hope you enjoy, and I'm just going to get into it and go through some of my picks. So starting off, I'm going to go through rookie of the year. So I think there's basically two schools of thought for this. You either are picking Trae Young or Luka Doncic, and I think that I am going to go with Luka Doncic. He has been more consistent throughout the entirety of the year. Yes, Trae Young has been very good down the stretch, but he really only turned it on in about the last 25 to 30 games, whereas Luka was basically playing astonishingly throughout the entire season for a rookie. His stats this year are 21 points per game on 43% from the field and 33% from three. He's averaging, along with that, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, which is pretty good, and then 1 steal per game. So, pretty decent numbers. He's averaging 2 more points a game than Trae Young, about the same amount of assists, and significantly more rebounds. And so I don't really have much of an explanation besides that. The Mavericks have a few more wins than the Hawks do, and so for that reason, I'm going with Luka Doncic as well. The next pick I have on here would be Most Improved Player of the Year, where I have Pascal Siakam winning. The other main guy I considered here was D'Angelo Russell, but despite D'Angelo Russell leading his team into the playoffs, I kind of had to weigh. Pascal Siakam's essentially been like the third option on the Raptors, and is being the second seed as the third option more valuable than being the sixth seed as the one option? And I kind of debated, and I thought, I'm going to pick Pascal because D'Angelo Russell was a third overall pick, and people expected him to be this all-star caliber player, whereas nobody really expected this out of Pascal. And I think his jump is even more significant too, as far as points and rebounds is more significant than D'Angelo's jump in points and assists. So this year, Pascal's averaging 17 points per game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block a game. Last year, he was only averaging 7 points per game, so that's a 10-point increase. He also went from shooting 51% from the field last year to 55% this year. He went from shooting 22% from three-point land last year to now he's shooting 37%, so a 15 percentage point increase. He also went from shooting 62% from the free throw line last year to shooting 79% this year, a 17 percentage point increase. And then rebounds, he's gone up 2.5. Assists, he's gone up 1. Steals and blocks are basically the same, but I feel like those are all some pretty major increases, and he's been a great option for the Raptors this year. Next, I have one which would be um, Defensive Player of the Year, in which I have Rudy Gobert winning. He is pretty high up there in win shares. He's led Utah to the second best defense in the NBA. I think Giannis is close, but I think Rudy just defense is what he's all about, and I think yes, the Bucks are good because of Giannis's defense, but I think they'd still be a pretty good defensive team even if Giannis weren't there. Whereas I think Utah wouldn't really have much chance on defense if Rudy Gobert wouldn't be there. I think they'd be a lot more average in the middle of the pack. Whereas I still think Bucks could be like a top 10, like maybe the 10th best defense without Giannis. So he's one of the top guys in blocks per game, I think, behind Miles Turner. Gets a ton of rebounds, and so I'm going to go with Rudy Gobert. Let's see here. My executive of the year I have as Jerry West. I think he's turned the Clippers around really well. I think a lot of people thought that they were going to majorly fall off this year, but he did some good trades. He essentially traded Tobias Harris for Landry Shamet and Mike. Let's see here. Basically Landry Shamet, yeah. And actually, Landry Shamet has played pretty decent for being basically a guy that no one expected anything out of. He also was smart in not re-signing DeAndre Jordan, which I think was a good move on the Clippers' part in that they didn't really need him since they had Marcin Gortat and then Montrezl Harrell, so they didn't really need him. I think then also just kind of not going crazy and tanking. Like they did a bunch of different things that really added up to make it a good season for them. But I think um, when they traded away Tobias Harris, I shortly expected like Lou Williams and Harold to be traded away as well. But they kept those guys, and they still were good enough to be the 8th seed in the playoffs. So I have to tip my hat to Jerry West there. As far as coach of the year, I have Mike Malone of the Denver Nuggets. I think that the popular pick here is Mike Budenholzer of the Bucks, but in my opinion, I thought for the last couple of years that the Bucks should be at the caliber of team that they have been this year. So I think ever since 15 to or not 15 to 16, but 16 to 17, I thought that season that they could be like a 55 win team, and they were like maybe like a 45 win team. And then last year, same thing, like in the mid 40s, but I thought that they could have been like the 3rd seed in the East. So in a way, I'm not really like shocked that the Bucks are great this year because they have a top 5 player, arguably number 1 player now in Giannis, and they have a really good supporting cast around him. So I kind of always thought that they could be good, and so instead of them vastly exceeding my expectations this year, that it's more like they're kind of like meeting my expectations this year. Whereas with Denver, I think I expected them to maybe be like the 7th seed, but I in no way expected them for them to be the 2 seed. So for that reason, I am putting Mike Malone as my coach of the year. He took a team that really didn't get any improvements from last year, except for Paul Millsap, who isn't as much of himself as he used to be. But they got Paul Millsap back from injury, and that's basically the only addition. And I think that he has just done a marvelous job of getting them to the 2 seed, and I'm very impressed with that. And so for that reason, I have Mike Malone as my coach of the year. Now for MVP, which is probably the most controversial of out of every pick, but I have Giannis, and here's why. Harden's averaging about 36 points per game, 6 or 7 rebounds, and about 8 assists per game. And that's in about 37 minutes a night. But then I looked at Giannis' stats, and it's like 27, 13, and 6 assists a game in 33 minutes a night. But then I adjusted that for 36 minutes to be closer to what Harden's playing, and Giannis is averaging 30 points a night, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 1 steal, 2 blocks a game. And he's shooting 58% from the field. And so for all of those reasons combined, I think when you adjust it, if they were playing the same way, I'm going to give it to Giannis. Giannis's team is better by 7 wins than Harden's. Giannis, I think, with the rebounding and the assists, is better statistically, and the blocks better statistically than Harden. Also more efficient from the field, even though not from 3-point land, from the field for sure. And he's also a way better defensive player. So for all those reasons, I am giving MVP to Giannis. Now, as for my all NBA teams, let's see here. So for the first team, I have at the guard spot Steph, who, to go over his stats quick, Steph this year is averaging 27 points per game, 44% from 3-point land, 5 rebounds, 5 assists a game. Don't really need to explain why he's good. I have him at one of my guard spots, and at the other guard spot, I have Harden, averaging 36 points per game, 7 rebounds, 7.5 assists a game, 2 steals a game. So I think that one's pretty clear as well. On my forward spots, I have the obvious one, Giannis, who I just talked about. So he's my first forward slot on the first team. And then my second forward slot, I went back and forth between Paul George and Durant a lot, and I came down to this. Durant has had a good season, but it's been pretty middle of the pack for him, honestly. He hasn't really done anything particularly special. He's just kind of been himself, which is a very good player. But when you look at his stats, he's averaged 26 points per game, 6 assists, 6 rebounds, 1 block, 1 steal a game, 52% from the field, 35% from 3 on 17 shots per night. And then you look at Paul George on 21 shots per night, so more. He's shooting 44% from the field, which is worse, but he is out shooting Durant from the 3-point line, 39% compared to 35. Also from the free throw line, it's like a Durant shooting 88%, Paul George shooting 84%, so not a huge difference there. Paul George is averaging 28 points per game, so more points. 8 rebounds per game, so more rebounds. Only 4 assists, so less assists, but he's averaging 2.2 steals, so that's, I think, actually leading the league. So there you go right there. And then about a half a block per game. So each is slightly better in a few different categories, but I feel like this is Paul George's year, so I'm giving it to Paul George for first team. And then as far as center, I have as my All NBA first team center, I have Joel Embiid averaging 28 points per game, 14 rebounds, and 4 assists a game, along with 1 steal and 2 blocks. I think that's a pretty clear cut one. So for my second team, I have at the guard spots number 1, Damian Lillard, who I think is averaging around 26 points per game, putting up his usual great stats. So I think he's a pretty obvious choice. And then I have Russell Westbrook as my other choice, who this year is averaging 23 points per game, 43% from the field, 11 rebounds, 11 assists a game, 2 steals. So I think that triple double speaks for itself. At the forward slots, I have KD, who I just mentioned, and then I have Kawhi at the other spot, who this season is averaging 27 points per game, 50% from the field, 37% from three, 7 rebounds a game, 2 steals a game. Pretty impressive stats. So I have him at the other forward spot. And then I have Nikola Jokic at the All NBA second team slot, who is averaging this season 20 points per game, 51% from the field, 11 rebounds a game, 7 assists as a center, 1 steal a game, and 1 block a game, leading them to the second best record in the West, which is super impressive in my opinion. Okay, so now on to my All NBA third team, where I have at the guard spots Kyrie Irving, averaging this year 24 points per game, 49% from the field, 40% from three, 5 rebounds a game, 7 assists a game, which is a career high, 1.5 steals a game, and a half a block a game. So I think that's a pretty clear choice. Now I struggled to find somebody for this second guard spot. I was thinking somewhere between Devin Booker, possibly Klay Thompson. A few different guys on here, but I ultimately landed on Bradley Beal, who this season averaged career high 26 points per game, 48% from the field, 35% from three, 5 rebounds a game, career high, 6 assists a game, career high, 1.5 steals, career high, and 1 block per game. And so I just thought, the Wizards weren't great this year, but Bradley Beal actually performed tremendously, so I have him as my other guard spot on here. Okay, as my forward spots, I have LeBron, who despite a down season did average 28, 8, and 8. So I think that he deserves to have a spot on here still on pretty decent efficiency, over 50% from the field. At my other forward spot, I struggled again to kind of figure out who I wanted to put on here, but ultimately I settled on Blake Griffin, who this season averaged 25 points per game, 46% from the field, 36% from three, which is very good for him. 8 rebounds a night, 5 assists a night, which is good for him for a power forward. 1 steal a game, and really no blocks per game, about a half a block per game. And at my center, I struggled again, but I ultimately went with Karl-Anthony Towns. I was between him and Rudy Gobert, but I ultimately went with Cat when I looked at his efficiency numbers. So he's averaging 24 points per game, shooting 52% from the field and 40% from three, which I thought was very impressive. So 24 points per game, 12 rebounds a night, 3 assists, 1 steal, and nearly 2 blocks per game. So from that perspective, I thought that was really impressive. And so for that reason, I had him as my center for my All-NBA third team. The all-defensive teams and all-rookie teams I'm going to cover a little bit quicker. So I'm not really going to explain why I picked them just because they're not as important to me. So here I go. First team. And just if you're wondering, I either picked them just really quickly based on just really impressive defensive numbers, or I look a lot at defensive win shares and defensive rating. Those are my 2 ways of picking positions for all defensive teams. So all defensive first team at the guard spots, I have Malcolm Brogdon on the #1 defense in the league, along with Marcus Smart. Then at the forwards, I have Paul George, who led the league in steals, Giannis, who is leading the best defense in the NBA, and then Rudy Gobert, who I have as my Defensive Player of the Year. Second team, Donovan Mitchell, who's 5th in defensive win shares in the NBA. Mike Conley, who is just an all-around good defender and doesn't get enough recognition on that side of the ball. I have then Kawhi, Draymond, and Miles Turner. Miles Turner leading the lead in blocks. So then for my all-rookie first team, I have Trae Young, Luka Doncic, Colin Sexton, Marvin Bagley, and DeAndre Ayton. All very impressive rookies. And then on my all-rookie second team, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Kevin Huerter, Landry Shamet, Jaren Jackson, and Kevin Knox. A lot of guys on here who I actually was very surprised I ended up putting on here. never at the beginning of the year would I have guessed Shea Gilgeous, Landry Shamet, or Kevin Herter would have been on here. They all kind of came out of nowhere, in my opinion, to play really well, and I just was really impressed by them. So that's it, guys. Those are all my award picks for this year. I went through my individual awards, my All NBA teams, my All Defensive teams, and my All Rookie teams. Comment below if you agree or disagree and want to let me know about it. I would appreciate hearing from you. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you have a good day, and I will see you next time. Bye.